Kara, good evening. Invercargill City Council held an extraordinary meeting this afternoon to discuss the Tiwai aluminium smelter and its future. Discussions included the economic impact and collateral effects of any potential closure. Among those speaking, former smelter chair Tom Campbell, who signed the current power contract between the smelter and Meridian Energy in 2006. He says economic conditions were quite different at that time and believes both parties need to compromise. He said Tiwai is both extremely productive and one of the most efficient smelters in the world. Also among those addressing the meeting, union representatives and the Southland Chamber of Commerce. Following general discussion of the smelter and the situation, the meeting then went into a public excluded session where councillors discussed an awareness campaign with initiatives such as full-page advertisements around the country being discussed. We spoke with Invercargill Mayor Tim Shadbolt.
What sort of information would you be sharing in a full-page advert?
Well, we want the people of New Zealand to find out why we were the most competitive country in the world in terms of electricity generation in the 60s, and now we're the most expensive country in the world. What has changed? What's the cause of this? And how can we improve our performance for the future?
Some other things that were brought up in the meeting earlier, one by Dr. Aaron Fox, about the world stage, watching how this plays out. What are your thoughts on that? Well,
very much so, especially in Japan, of course, because Japan is our fourth biggest trading partner, and the biggest product they import from New Zealand is aluminium, and they need it for the high-tech end of the market, the cell phones and computers and DVDs. And they're very concerned about what's happening. It doesn't reflect on our international image. Companies that are going to set up in New Zealand, if we're going to get through this recession through exports, they want security of supply and they want cheap energy. And there's no reason why we shouldn't be able to provide that.
You have managed to debunk a few myths over the last 24 hours.
Certainly, and I think the biggest myth of all is that if the smelter is closed down, the rest of New Zealand will have really cheap electricity. That is just not going to happen, and nobody who's looked at this issue can really believe that is likely to be the outcome.
Also, the age of the smelter itself?
Again, I mean, I felt that maybe it was in its twilight years and was looking at perhaps 10 years ahead, but of course with new technology coming on board that can slot into the smelter with good maintenance, and most of all with a really skilled and well-educated workforce, we can keep going, perhaps they're suggesting, for another 50 or 60 years.
Some beds will be restricted to over 18s, with government announcing today it intends to apply restrictions to commercial suntanning beds. New Zealand and Australia have the highest melanoma incidence in the world, and over 300 people die from melanoma in New Zealand each year. The restriction would come into effect after the Health Act is amended later this year. Introducing restrictions for commercial sunbeds is one of 5 areas government is working on to lower skin cancer rates. The World Health Organization reports the risk of skin cancer increases by 75% when sunbeds are used prior to the age of 30. Former Southland stag Hoani McDonald is sharing an important message. Get a heart check, that's the message he was sharing with Marist rugby players at their team practice last night. The 34-year-old is helping the Heart Foundation to increase public awareness of getting heart checks and to encourage people to get them. The Invercargill father of 2 has first-hand knowledge of how important the issue is, having suffered a sudden cardiac arrest and flatlining during a rugby match last year. But he says he was surprised by some of the statistics.
One of them was about 5,000 people die every year of a heart disease, and that's about 1 every 90 minutes. It's something that you don't really think about. And then, and also the demographics lowering. I think about 35 to 55 is where the most people are dying, so it's quite young, really. And especially, we're trying to get the message out there because it seems the other part of the demographics, Polynesian, Māori descent men.
Now, for yourself, given the experience that you've had, do you feel like hopefully people will pay a bit more attention to the message coming from you?
Well, I hope they do listen to the message rather than listen to me, but I guess in light of recent events, it kind of showed that it can happen to anyone. I felt that I was reasonably fit and active and kind of looked after my body pretty decently, and then something bang, just like it happens, and didn't see it coming, and no one really did, and then the doctors didn't really know if they could have seen it coming beforehand or after. They can't really tell me that. So I guess the message is just to get your heart checked out rather than wait for something like that to happen and then be reactive, be proactive.
And you're here spreading the message for the guys at the Marist Rugby Club. Why do that here?
Well, I'm part of the Marist Rugby Club. I've been here my whole life. So I'm helping out coaching, so I think it's a good point to start with these young blokes out here and the people around the club, and also hang them up in the club for the older boys too. They also need to get their hearts checked. I guess it's just a stepping stone, so here I plan on taking it back to Rugby Southland, and because we do Rugby Smart courses and try to get the coaches coming around and hanging them up in their change rooms, just try to get the message out there.
After the break, the 10th annual Y Try will be held in Invercargill this weekend. Why it could be the last. Welcome back. The 10th annual Y Try will be held in Invercargill this weekend, and it could be the last. The multi-sport event was started by Environment Southland a decade ago, but this will be the last event organised by Regional Council. Entrants can take part in different categories, including running, biking, kayaking and walking. It's hoped another organisation will decide to keep the Y Try running. The event is held to raise awareness of the river and the environment, and event manager Michelle Poole says that this goal has now been achieved.
It started out as an opportunity to show people what a great asset we've got with the stop banks, the flood protection scheme, Thompson's Bush, and of course all the water quality issues that go along with the river. And we feel that we've achieved that. You know, that we know that the use of the stop banks, for example, is huge. You could stand here any time of any day and you'll see people running backwards and forwards. So this will be the 10th event. We feel it's time to wrap it up, but we're hoping that Sports Southland might pick it up and keep it going in some form.
So have you been in talks with Sports Southland about them taking this over, or?
Yeah, informally. They're keen on it because it's actually an accessible event. You don't have to leave Invercargill to do multisport, which is great, and it's affordable. But we haven't got a commitment from them yet, and that's a decision for them to make.
The average New Zealand parent spends more than 8 hours a day caring for their children, and some mothers are spending twice that. A report by Statistics New Zealand, Caring for Children, shows parents with children under 14 spend on average just over 8 hours a day caring for their children. Mothers spend 4 hours a day on average more than fathers caring for children, although the gap lessens in the weekends. Mothers of under 5s care for their children on average 12 hours a day. Social Statistics Manager Steve Manning says research suggests the biggest influences on the time parents spend caring for children are employment, the age of the youngest child, and whether the day is a weekend or weekday. Duncan Sarkis is a name synonymous with Kiwi filmmaking, and specifically cult movies Scarface and the more recent Two Little Boys. He says creative writing is his first love, while older brother Robert's expertise lies in directing. Margot Sutherland spoke to him about his new role in the South, teaching screenwriting tactics to students at the Southern Institute of Technology.
I often feel that my role is to unlock people's abilities to write, because quite often there's a lot of latent writers amongst all of us, and I do see that as my first role in any writing class, is to encourage people to realise how creative they already are.
So how do you do that?
It's just unlocking people. It's just on some levels it's just getting them writing in the first place, and also trying to help them with the sort of mental blocks that most people face to do with things like writing, the reasons that we start writing and we just stop. Like I understand the psychology of that, because I've been through various creative blocks and I know the cause of them. I know how it works and I know how to get through them.
How have you found the talent down here?
Oh, really good. Yeah. There's lots of really smart people attracted to come down here, or they might already be from here. And definitely there's some real smart cookies here. That's for sure.
So were they given set projects to do while you've been in town?
A mix. They're all working on their own short film projects. So there's that. The third years are all working on a group project that they're all busily ferreting away on at the moment. And we also create, when I teach, I create a big hypothetical group project that we all make up as a group, and we had a really fun reading yesterday where basically every single person in the class had to write 2 different scenes. We married them all up and just did a big giant reading, and it was a lot of fun, quite ridiculous where those things go.
So exposure to that type of thing, does it pull out quite clearly who are the good writers and who aren't?
I'm not looking at who are good writers and who aren't good writers. That's not my focus. My focus is to encourage everyone to be the best writer that they can be. But I've certainly seen some good writers. There's no such thing as someone who's not a good writer. You're a good writer. Everyone has the potential of being a good writer, and what I'm doing is trying to help everyone get the most out of themselves.
Daylight saving finishes this weekend, with clocks going back an hour on Sunday. The fire service is urging people to use daylight saving as a reminder to check their smoke alarms are working. Invercargill Fire Service Fire Risk Management Officer Mike Cahill says it's important to ensure smoke alarms and batteries are working, as they don't last forever. He says a high percentage of structure fires in Invercargill are at homes which do not have working smoke alarms, which is disappointing. Smoke alarms save lives and give an early alert to fires, which can limit damage. And that's it from us here on News for the Week. Stay with us though. Coming up in sport, we profile Highlanders midfield back Jason Emery. Good night.